Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to do a quick video on how to remove the striker assembly, striker safety from the Glock 19 Gen X. This will be the same with other Glocks as well. I've already done a video on how to field strip this Glock, so you can check on that if you don't know how. I'll go through it real fast as we go and get right to the striker. First thing, obviously, I want to ensure that the weapon is safe and clear. And as you can see, there's no magazine, no round in the chamber, no ammunition in my workplace. In order to take the slide off, you have to press the trigger. So I'm going to bring the slide forward. I'll rack it a few times. Go ahead and keep it in a safe direction, press the trigger. And you have a tab on this side that need to be pushed or pulled down while you move the slide a little bit to the rear. So I'll just grip it, pull it back, pull the tabs down, and let the slide go forward, and I'll take the slide off. Okay, so I'll set that to the side. Forgot my spring I'll take out, my recoil spring's out, and then the barrel I'll work out, and the barrel's out. Okay, again, that was pretty quick. I did do a video step by step for new shooters, so you could check that out on my channel or website as well. So now to take the striker assembly out, which I do on a regular basis because it does get dirt and debris inside and it should be clean and dry. I'm going to have my handy dandy magnetic tray like I always do if you've seen any of my videos for the small springs and parts. So the first thing you have to do is remove the back plate. In order to do that, you need to have the striker assembly forward, right, or down. So what I do is I'll just take a little punch. And right here below this piece, which is part of the striker, you'll see there's like a little plastic piece. That's part of the striker housing. You need to press that down or forward in order to get the plate off. So I'll just take my punch and I'll put it in here and I'll press down, forward again. You could use a punch, whatever you want. Sometimes I'll use my nylon pick. I have some nylon picks. These are really good to have because they don't scratch or mar up anything. But this one I'll be careful with. So I'm going to stand it up so I can control it. And again, I'm just going to push down. And then at the same time, I'm going to start to move the back plate off. Be careful taking the back plate off. You don't just want to fling it off because there is stuff under spring tension. It'll pop out. So I put it in. I press down and I can feel that my striker assemblies move forward. And I'll just start to move the back plate off. Once I get it started, I can set my punch aside, and you can see there's a gap now because I've started to move it enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to move it, but I'll keep my thumb over it, and I'll work the back plate off. Okay, and I'll take that, I'll put it in my little tray, and as you can see, there we go. So there's the back of my striker assembly. So now to take that out, the piece that was sticking up, the shiny piece you can see there, I'm just going to press it back and I'll pull my striker assembly out, and there is my striker assembly, which we'll take apart here in a minute. So I'll set that aside. You have a rod right here. This rod goes through and the end of it is actually right there, which is a little shinier than my extractor, which helps with the extractor. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that rod out. And it'll just come out, and you can see it's a small rod. It's got a small spring on it. This is a separate piece that goes in the spring. This you could actually take apart if you wanted to. I typically don't. I just wipe it down and clean it, but you can pull this spring off. It's really tight, so you could use a small screwdriver or a nylon pick to kind of pop it off, and this top piece will also come off. Put that in my tray. This is your striker safety. It has a spring under it, a really small spring. So what you want to do is you want to press this down and your extractor will actually come out because it's holding it in place. And there's my extractor, just came out all by itself. That goes in my tray, and I'll just be real careful here because again there's a tiny spring, and we all know you lose a spring, you're never going to find it again. So I'll just tip it, try to work it out as best as I can. Come on. There it is. and I'll take it out, and you could see how tiny this spring is, and this spring will come right out. Okay, it's not held in there under high pressure or anything. You can see there's a little spot for it, and we could take that and we could set that aside as well. Okay, I'll put that in here. Okay, so now I've got everything out from my slide and I can clean it. Again, remember, inside where your striker assembly goes, it needs to be clean and dry, so make sure that's clean. Wipe everything down like you normally do. Okay, so now we're going to take the striker assembly apart. The striker assembly comes in 4 pieces. You have your striker. These are your striker spring retaining cup or cups. This is 2 pieces. On my SIG, it's a 1-piece cup. These are 2 real small pieces. Your striker spring and your striker housing. So there's a couple ways you can do this. The spring needs to be compressed down away from the cups. The cups will move, and sometimes they'll fly across the workbench or table. I had that happen recently. One shot out, and luckily it hit my coffee cup, so it didn't slide off my workbench onto the deck, and I'd probably be ordering parts from Glock right now. But you have to just be real careful. So a couple ways you can do it. Obviously, you could just set it up, press it down, and have the cups come off. Again, being very careful how you do it. If you know, going real slow so they don't fly out. Another thing you could do if you're going to do it, you could also take something like a rag and just put it over and then press them down, right? Because you can feel what you're doing. This way, if they pop off, which they will, they won't get far. This is a little striker tool, and what this is made by the SIG guy. This is $14.99. I use this on my SIGs. It's made for the 320, 365 series SIGs, but it does also work on my Hellcats, and it does work on my Glocks as well. The only thing is because the spring is smaller, it doesn't fit as perfect, so you kind of work with it a little bit to get it to work. But most people don't have these little tools. If you don't want to buy one, again, it's not necessary per se. Another way you could use your slide as a tool is just take your slide, and this is something I've seen a lot. Take your striker assembly backwards and set it in the hole where it was, and then just turn it so that the part sticking out of the striker, which is this part right here, is up against the slide housing itself. And that's actually pretty clever. I saw somebody do that a long time ago, and this seems to be more popular because, again, you don't always have a tool for it. Still have to be very careful, but you can work it down, and since most people don't have the tool, we'll do it that way. And you just got to get your, I don't really have nails, but you got to get a nail in there, and you got to start pulling the spring down to compress it and control the cups. That's the big thing. And there's one cup. Okay, so there's one of the little cups, and there's the second cup. Okay, now be careful, hold on to the spring because it will shoot up. Just ease it back up. Okay, and then you could take your striker assembly back out, set it down, and again you can see how small the cups are. I'll put those in my tray like I do with everything. You can now remove the spring, and the spring can go either direction, it doesn't matter. And then you just push back on the striker itself, and that'll remove it from the housing. And I can set all this aside in my tray. And that is it. So as you can see, I've taken all the parts out. That's really as far down as you want to go. There's nothing else left in there. The only thing left on my slide are my sights. So I'll clean it up, and like I said, just make sure it's clean inside where your striker assembly sits. I use Remington dry lube. I've done this in other videos. There's also Hoppy's dry lube. You know, any type of dry lube is good to use on the spring because it won't be wet and cause any problems. If you're having problems manipulating it, you know, holding the slide, or especially if you're going to use that method, or even having to hold the slide to take things apart, you could always set it in a vise. And in my vise I've got these plastic pieces They got magnets and they sit on it. Hook them up. On the side here, you just get it in there nice and tight. This won't damage your slide, and that's also a good option, so you have both your hands free. You're not having to hold anything. And that's it. So you're done. Now we're going to reassemble. So let's get our parts together. So the first thing I'm going to do is put my extractor back in. And in order to do that, I have to put the safety back in. So I'm going to grab my extremely small spring. And here is my striker safety. It's got the little indentation or hole in the bottom where you want to put the spring. And the way this sits, it'll sit this way, right? You see this little flat piece on top, it'll go this way. And there's a little side that's flat and one it's kind of rounded at the end. The rounded part is going to go towards the inside of the slide. And it doesn't always fit right away. You may have to work it in because it has to be perfectly straight. So I'll put my spring back in. And remember, this spring can fall out, so be careful with that. I want to make sure I have the right side. So I've got the little rounded side is down, so I'm going to hold it this way so I don't drop anything. I'm going to work it back in. Apologize for it being hard to see, but I got to be able to see up. See, the spring's moving already. Oops. There it goes. Okay, and it's back in place. And you know it's back in because it's springy. And you can see if it shifts, if it turns in even a little bit, it won't go in. So just work with it, it'll go back in, and you're good to go. So I'm going to hold it down because where the groove is in it, or the opening slot, has to line up. See if you can, I don't know if you can see it, but you can see it's got the little slot, and then where it's just rounded, that needs to go and line up with my extractor. Okay, then your extractor just sits in there. I'll line it up. There you go. And then once you release the safety, it's locked in place. Okay, so you don't have to worry about it popping out. Unless you press the safety down, it'll the extractor will come out. I'm going to take my rod. Okay. Now I could put my rod in now, or I could put it in after I put the striker assembly back in. It doesn't matter. I'll put it in now. The spring side goes up, and it goes right in that little hole. Okay, so that's in place. Now I want to reassemble my striker assembly. Okay, so now we're going to put the striker assembly back together and back into the slide. I apologize for some video cuts. I'm working out in my garage, and I've got vehicles driving by, so I'm trying to cut the noise down. Alright, so first we want to put our striker assembly back together, right? So I've got my striker spring, and my housing. So just stick it back in. And your spring goes on, it can go either direction. And again, you need to compress it and get those cups on. Those cups are real small, it's kind of a pain to do to put them back on. You still have to be careful because if you let go of the spring or it shifts too much, the caps will go flying. Again, a couple ways you can do it. Using the slide is probably one of the most common if you don't have a tool, and you'll put that on there. And then what you got to do, I try to compress it back. You can see how far I've got to bring it. And then I'm going to take my little cups, and you go with the sleeve side down. So I have one on. So typically I'll put one on first, turn it around a little bit, and then try to get the other one on. And again, this is where you got to be real careful because I'm aimed like straight at a wall and it's going to bounce and disappear. And then you put the other one on. You don't have to put them both on at the same time, but they just have to be lined up. Yep, there you go. And they're both lined up. I know it was hard to see because I'm trying to manipulate it. Again, that That's why it might be a good idea, if you aren't used to doing it, to get some of those inserts for your vise, if you have a vise, so you could just set it in there, and then you've got both hands free. You're not really worrying about the slide. But you can see it's back on, and again, just put one on. Pull it back, put one on, and then kind of turn the whole thing, and you could use this finger to help hold that cup in place so it doesn't fly off, and then put the other one on and slowly release the spring. And I say slowly because if one of the cups isn't in all the way, it'll go flying. And that's a whole nother video of me going through my garage looking for the little cup. Okay, so now my striker assembly's back together. All I have to do is reinsert it into the slide, work it back in. Right, bring it forward as much as I can, and I'm ready to reassemble. Next thing I have to do, I've got to put the back plate back on, and to do that, you're just going in the opposite direction. You need to press the striker assembly forward, and you could do that just from the back. For this, I usually use a nylon pick, but use whatever you feel comfortable using. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push it down far enough to get the back plate started. Okay, because it won't be able to go all the way in just by moving the striker assembly. So I'm going to press down, and you can see the striker assembly. And I'm going to try to see if I can get you to see it a little better. So I'm pressing just down on the back. You can see I moved the striker assembly, moved flat. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. So I'm just going to move it down. I'm going to take my back plate, and I get my back plate started. And I just have to push it in far enough to hold the striker assembly down. Okay, so that's as far as I have to go with that. This is the rod that we removed earlier. That's what's holding it from going all the way in. So what you want to do is you need to push that down like you did before in other weapons probably. Okay, here we go. Press it down. You remember, you got to press it far, all the way down, and get your back plate working, and then just click it in place. You're done. Okay, so everything's back together. You could test it as far as making sure the spring didn't shift, and all you have to do that is you could press on this metal part. You press it forward, it doesn't move. Press down on the striker safety lock, and it should move forward, and you can see the tip is sticking out like it's supposed to, and then you can move it back, and it locks back into place, and the safety pop back up, so you're good to go. Reassemble it just like you normally would. Spring back in, barrel. Reconnect the two pieces of the bit. Cycle it a few times, and I am set. I also usually test fire it. I'm pointing it in a safe direction. I'll just dry fire it really fast. I'll hold the trigger to the rear, I cycle it, I release the trigger to the reset, and then press the trigger again, and I'm good to go. That's it. So that's all you have to do. You can see it's kind of a pain, but not in some places. Just the biggest thing, be really careful of the retaining cup or cups. If you have one, it's not that big of a problem because it won't come off. But those little cups, like I said, if it wasn't for my having coffee in the morning when I was doing it, I'd be ordering parts from Glock right now. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, give us a call. Check out msddefense.com for NRA courses and additional services we do offer. Until then, be safe out there, watch your six, and I will see you next time.